Just because something negative comes your way, it doesn't mean that it's bad. Sometimes there is some good in the negative and constructive feedback. So don't just say, oh, if it's something bad, someone's saying about me, I'm filtering out and I'm just accepting the good. Dust that off, right? You need to examine yourself, and feedback is an excellent lens and a way for you to do that. Don't believe that you are too insignificant to have an impact. Don't believe that you are not worth anything to anybody. Please accept that you are a child of worth, that you have something meaningful to give to the world, that you have a light in you that is meant to shine, and that we need you.
I'm so excited for this conversation.
How's everybody feeling today?
Believe there's time for it, and there are going to be seasons in your life where
I know that I can do a damn good job.
I can be who I am, and as a leader.
So do not be afraid of collaboration.
As we're learning things, we're gonna make lots of mistakes.
It's for you to then continue to move around this space, to move around the world and navigate it.
You are right where you're meant to be. So today we're having the conversation with Faith, and I'm going to take a moment to introduce her. Faith is such a wonderful, wonderful human being. I've had the pleasure of working with her through her law practice, Mitton Law. Like Faith is beyond just being a lawyer, a trademark lawyer. She's a cultural strategist. She literally supports Black women in their edification around IP protection, around trademark law, and around understanding the things that you would legitimately need to actually take those steps to rest in terms of protecting yourself, right? Because we know, rest is not just bath bombs, right? You actually have to put the systems in place to legitimately create that rest for yourself. And Faith is someone who's out here doing it. She's on TikTok, she's on YouTube, she's on LinkedIn, she has her own business, and she's just doing it, right? And Faith is someone just like us who's exited the system and who has started to create those systems of rest for herself. But she thought that she should share how she stepped into her own wholeness as she exited the system, which is why she's having that conversation with us today about feedback not being a threat. Because as you step into your own business, even though you yourself have been in those boardrooms and in those conversations where you are offering that feedback, it's very different to sit on the other side of that, right? Where you yourself now have to be the one receiving the feedback and then actually putting it into action. So I really am excited to have the conversation today. And with that, I welcome Faith, the educator, the strategist, the lawyer, the mother, the friend, the aspiring whatever else that she wants to be as she gets older. I'm so very excited. Y'all welcome Faith. Hi, Faith.
Hey, Norlander. Thank you for that so wonderful introduction. Wow. I'm over here blushing.
I mean, warranted. We got to let the people know who you is. Yeah. Okay? I mean, they kind of know, but we got to remind them.
That's right.
Remind them.
Yeah.
So before we fully dive into all of the questions, and I have so many questions for you for the next 30 to 40 minutes. First, I want to thank you for being here, but then I want you to tell the people a little bit about yourself. I want them to hear it from you. I know they heard it from me, but I would love for them to hear it from your lips.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to thank you for having me on this platform, for sharing it with me. I don't take it for granted when someone allows me to get in front of their people. So I appreciate that. Like you mentioned, I'm the managing attorney and founder of Mitton Law Firm, PLLC. We are a nationwide practice focusing on trademark law. We help our clients protect their brands, their names, taglines, logos, the things that represent their identity to the world, right? It's really important to lock down ownership over that, because who you are, what you represent is the essence of your business, and you don't want to see somebody else capitalize on it, or even worse, for there to be confusion around when someone is dealing with you or somebody else, particularly when, you know, the competing brand is one that is maybe inferior to yours, or they don't have the same quality of service or product that you offer. So trademark law is very complex, and I love it because of that. It mixes, you know, my my analytical brain with my creative side, and I get to, you know, play with it and be able to give lots of value to my clients who are building brands that they want to scale, that they want to sell, that they want to build legacies around. And so that's what I do all day, every day, and I absolutely love it. And I'm so excited to talk about this conversation because so much of what I experienced on my journey to building my law firm had to do with what I was told about myself, both from clients and from leaders. And so having this conversation is really important to me because I would love to be able to share with anyone who's in a similar position to understand how I was able to navigate to where I am now by the grace of God and with the wisdom that He's given me. You know, that's what I'm here for.
That was so wonderful. You know, I mean, we're not going to tell the people how we met, but I feel like we are kindred spirits, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like building something out of, you know, learning what the wounds and the projections that have been, you know, really passed on to us. Like, I really feel like that right there is we're not trauma bonding, but like, it's really something that a lot of Black women really need to lean into, like having these conversations in a very healthy dynamic of like, okay, this is what has happened to me and here's what I did, right? So I love that we're having this conversation today and you're passionate about it. So just to kick us off, I know you said that, you in your experience of what happened to you in the corporate space led you to starting Mitton Law. So you've already made that transition, obviously. And I really would like to ask, like, what did you have to unlearn about leadership in order to trust yourself outside of the system? You know, I really want to know, like, at least start off with such a big chunky question.
Yeah, and that is a big chunk. And I want to say this about the law profession. It might be true of other industries too, but there's this concept that, you know, when you're in law school, you don't learn the law. And when you graduate law school, you're not in a position to really practice. You don't know anything. So there's this concept of leadership referring to people who are new graduates of law school, who are newly admitted to the bar, as baby lawyers, right? You're essentially an infant, a newborn. You're really useless. You don't have anything meaningful to contribute, right? In a conversation, you are as good as a stack of pencils in the corner. Just sit there and do what you're told and don't say anything. And I won't say where, because I've been in a couple of different environments, but, you know, that attitude from people in a position of authority over you makes you feel some really negative things about yourself, right? Obviously, you go to law school, you're learning things, you learn some kinds of skills, and it is really disheartening to hear that you're useless when you come out and that you have nothing meaningful to say and nothing meaningful to contribute. And so for me, my interaction with those in leadership in these different capacities, in many instances, was not a positive one, because there wasn't a nurturing of the skill. It was just, you know, top down, this is what you're going to do, and I don't want to hear anything from you, right? And so I contrast that with other experiences where I did experience positive leadership from someone who was pouring into me, who saw potential in me and was willing to steer me in the right direction, right? Not just castigating me as a baby lawyer with no use, right? Who was just more of a liability than an asset, but somebody who saw potential and was willing to nurture that potential in me so that I could grow into the lawyer that I am now. And the different styles of leadership are things that we are all going to encounter on our respective journeys. And we have to be mindful of how we take in from those people, how much we internalize from those experiences, right? If I had said to myself and accepted the fact that I was useless, and that I was worthless, that I was just a liability and not an asset, and that I had nothing meaningful to say, and that would have shaped my mentality about how I approached client work, how I approached other things in my career, and it would have had a negative outcome. But I'm thankful that I did have some people along the way who did pour into me and who helped to draw those things out of me and to help me see that I do have something meaningful to say, and that I am someone with capacity and with skill. And of course, there were things I needed to learn at that early stage in my career, but having the right support to learn those things was really important.
I'm hearing you say that you had to, and I'm going to use the word picker, like you had to really learn how to calibrate your picker. You know what I mean? Because, like, it's crazy across this series. Like, I've spoken to different women, and they've talked about, finding community, right? And in these conversations, they talk about the gatekeepers and the mentors, or the manipulator mentors in that case, and they all had, in different essence of the word, they all said, you really have to calibrate your picker so that you could understand who would pour into you. So it sounds like you had to learn, or at some point unlearn, those negative things that's associated with the picker of people who are supporting you and like pouring into you. And I really enjoyed how you put that, because especially in the law space, right? Like, I know, I work for equity firm, a racial equity firm, and we've had the pleasure of working with some law practices and things like that, and a lot of them are still catching up, especially in the diversity space and things like that. So when you yourself have to have conversation with leadership, the dynamic is so different, right? Than speaking to someone who is like yourself. It's no longer about the law, it's no longer about the practice, but it's about something else. So I'm happy to hear you to voice it like that. The other thing that I found really interesting in what you were saying is that you were getting a practicing degree, but still felt useless. still felt useless. That is so interesting to hear, because you usually hear those things about, because I have a psychology degree, right? And my dad is a doctor. So like, you usually hear those things, like from my father, it's like, you need to get something that is practical. So my dad wanted me to be a lawyer. He wanted me a doctor. He wanted me to be, Nigerian parent, of course.
Of course.
Right? But you would always hear them say, like, get something that's practicing, that you can implement. But it's interesting to hear you say that even in your practicing degree is useless until you leave the place that teaches you how to do the practicing. Can you talk more? I mean, I know. Can you talk more about that? Because for the young women who are going into law, I don't want them to hear that and get discouraged. But I really want you to talk more about that.
Yeah, of course, because law school is I would say unique among the professional training institutions, in that when you go to med school, you're learning about the body and all that, and going to grad school, you're learning about theories and things that you're going to apply in whatever you're doing. When it comes to law school, you're not really learning the law. You're learning how to think like a lawyer. And that is very different than how we think. Lots of people think that lawyers, all we do is argue all day. And that's not really the case, right? You're learning how to evaluate a fact pattern, how to analyze it, how to apply different rules to the facts and come to a conclusion. And so in law school, you learn how to think like a lawyer, but not necessarily exactly, in some respects, what the law is. Of course, the law changes all the time. There are opportunities, however, to practice law in law school, which I took advantage of, and which I would encourage anyone who's interested in law practice to do. And these are called clinicals or practicums, where you will have an actual roster of clients while you are a student lawyer and you are performing legal services for those clients under the supervision of an attorney, right? The point being that until you, or unless you do that prior to graduating law school, you won't have any practical experience practicing law. So this idea or this mentality of referring to new graduates and newly admitted attorneys as baby lawyers is one that has been pervasive in the legal profession for so many times, but I hate it because I think it diminishes people, and it doesn't take stock of the whole picture. Obviously, there are all things that people need to learn as they mature in the profession, but if you're thinking about going to law school, take the opportunities that you can while you're in law school to develop yourself and to get experience and exposure to practice, because it's going to make you that much better and stronger when you're in a position to actually practice law.
Cause I was hearing that, I was like, oh, whoa, you're a lawyer, and wait, hold on, you ain't, oh, not until you finish. How much debt are you in? Because you know, with med school, you at least $300,000 in debt before you, before you even get to the place where they allow you to practice medicine, child.
Yeah.
That's a part of the reason why I chose not to go to medical school anymore. I mean, thousands of dollars down the drain later, I was just like, oh no, we're not adding $300,000 more to this. Like, oh no, ma'am. Anyway, but back to the questions. And I love that this is like a very hearty conversation that we're having, and it feels so healthy. I love it. So as you've made the transition into your own practice, and you've had to learn how to continue to, recalibrate your picker and things like that, right? Like, how does that show up in your practice now? Like, in terms of like how you engage with clients? Because I know you had to unlearn these behaviors, right? So I guess my question is a two-parter then. What are the things that you, like, specifically, right? What you had to do to unlearn or learn to recalibrate your picker? And then now, how is that showing up in your own law practice with how you deal with clients, how you deal with your staff, and things like that?
Yeah, for me, I want to share this story because I think it's something that we, especially as Black women, may have encountered or will encounter at some point if we're in the corporate space. And this is what, in some respects, prompted me to start seeking my own practice. I was having a salary conversation with the leadership at a place I was working at. And I was told by this person, we don't value you beyond this amount. Like, irrespective of what the industry says and irrespective of what, competitive salaries look like, we don't think you are worth more than this. And if I had allowed that to be my full, like, representation of myself, if I had accepted that as all that I was worth, it would have had a really detrimental impact on me, because I would have stayed in that place doing a very niche type of law practice. And I don't think I would have been able to grow as much. So for me, like, we had talked about earlier, like, being able to filter out the nonsense, and being able to identify those positive things. And now I want to say, to be clear, that just because something negative comes your way, it doesn't mean that it's bad. Sometimes there is some good in the negative and constructive feedback. So don't just say, oh, it was something bad someone's saying about me, I'm filtering out and I'm just accepting the good. But I had to realize in this particular instance that, the way that this person and this organization had treated me was inconsistent with my own value. And I had to separate that and disregard it and be mindful of who I really was, and what capacities and skills that I did have. And then I looked at what other people were telling me, clients who I had helped, who were saying, Faith, thank you for making this so easy for me to understand. I was struggling with this when I came to you, but since we've spoken, since we've worked together, I have insight and clarity that I didn't have before. And I was, interacting with other lawyers who were telling me something similar, like, you really have done a really good job of explaining this concept to a client. So, okay, I was learning how to sift through the things that were going to tear me down and accept the things that were going to build me up. And I realized too that sometimes the things that were going to build me up were not always going to be positive. Sometimes I had to take a little bit of a little, pinch here and there, but it was for my benefit. And that's where I started to develop this idea or this concept that feedback isn't a threat to you. Like it is a mirror. And sometimes when you look at yourself in the mirror, you got a little crumb on your face or a little something, you got to dust that off, right? You need to examine yourself, and feedback is an excellent lens and a way for you to do that. And so taking that all together in my practice now, I relish feedback. I love when people, both clients or colleagues or whomever, have something to say to me, because I want to know, am I serving people well? Like, at my heart, what I want to do is serve. That's what I feel like I was called to do. That's what I feel like I was made to do. And I want to make somebody else's life easier. So if I'm not doing a good job of that, I want to know. Or if I am doing a good job of that, I want to know that too, because I always feel like there is some way for me to improve in my procedures and how I explain things and how I present things. I always want to know what's going on or how I can be better, so that my servant's heart and the work that flows out of that servant's heart is something that's going to be valuable to the people that I'm serving, right? Because it doesn't make sense for me to do all this stuff and then no one's edified by it. No one is benefited from it. I want people to leave my presence better than how they came to me, and understanding how our interactions work and what kind of relationship we have, what kind of emotions they have as a result of working with me. All of that is important for me to know. So yes, I absolutely relish feedback, both positive and constructive feedback, because both are needed to help me build what I'm building.
Oh, I love that. So two things I wanna lift up in what you said, right? Like I wanna make sure people hear the powerful thing that you just said, which is defining your values. Like understanding what's valuable for you made it so that you yourself knew what your value was when you walked into the room and had that conversation around money. And so many folks, walk around here. It's like, I can negotiate my salary. I can negotiate this. I can negotiate that, but really they don't know the true value, right? And the value, I don't mean in terms of money or, what you're bringing to the table. It's, what are you valuing in terms of your impact in the world, right? You went and you got that feedback from your clients, from other lawyers, right? And then you understood that lined up with the value of you as a person. So you could have chucked the deuces and say, well, you know what? We're not aligned, right? And I really want to lift that up for people to really take that home, which is because it's really difficult. I know from working in, partially working in the space with legal, it's really hard for you to give feedback in the legal realm or accept feedback in the legal realm when you're working within these big, organizations, because like things like money, things like how you get partnered are impacted by how people see you in that space. So like, I am just very happy to hear that seems like at least a small blueprint for people to understand that, oh, like I need to understand what my value is so that I know whether or not I need to stay here or leave. So that I really appreciated that you offered that. The second thing I want to ask is, how did you give him feedback when you were having the conversation? Just a little tea for the people. A little tea for the people. Okay?
My feedback was my notice.
Ooh,
I'm gone.
Boundary.
Yeah.
Okay, you heard that. My feedback was my notice. Because why? I'm not gonna give you the opportunity to grow off of me, because I know that you're not gonna take this feedback. So I'm gonna just go on and get gone. Okay, okay, Miss Faith. Y'all heard that. Know your value and step.
Yeah.
Step. Okay.
Seriously.
I really appreciate you naming that. That's some wonderful advice. And I know we're talking about like stepping into your wholeness, and a big part of the conversation here is like creating rest, because a lot of us are still, as we've transitioned into these, owning our own businesses and things like that, we're still exhausted. We think, oh, we left, right? We've left. Great. Get to wake up when I want, but you still, but you wake up tired. Okay. You wake up exhausted and you're bone tired. And I'm wondering, as you yourself have stepped into your wholeness, what systems have you yourself, within your practice, have you put into place to be able to take that rest, take that feedback? Because I heard you say you're taking in that feedback from your clients, which is great, right? Which you're using it as a reflecting mirror. But feedback is not just something that's static, right? You get feedback from your body, right?
You're right.
Okay. You get feedback from your body. You get feedback from your family, right? You get feedback from the environment, right? So how else, as you step into your wholeness, are you using feedback holistically as a mirror? Because I want the law girlies, which starting a law practice is. You think you starting a business? Because let me talk a little. Y'all think y'all starting a business is cake? Start a law practice. Faith is my only law friend, honey child. Okay, Faith is not. So start a law practice. It's hard. So how are you, bringing rest as you step into your wholeness in your business?
I'm so happy you asked that question, because I believe there is a time for everything. And there are going to be seasons in your life where you are just, hustling and moving. And sometimes you're not sleeping as much as you would like to. You're not going on vacation as much as you would like to, right? Because you're just in that season of I'm building and I'm pushing. So I would say early in my practice that was definitely the case. And sometimes I go through those cycles where, a shift needs to take place in the business and I got to go in a hustle mode, right? But I can't stay permanently in that place because it's not healthy, right? I'm going to wear myself out. I'm going to burn myself out. So I'm mindful of understanding and creating very specific goals that I'm trying to accomplish in a specific time frame, and working out what I need to do to accomplish those goals in that time frame. Who do I need to bring on board to assist me, right? Because I cannot do everything. It's impossible for me to do all the things and wear all the hats in my business. So when I need to outsource, I happily do it because I just can't do all the things. So for me, I would say at the very core level, my systems for, making sure that I am whole, that I'm rested, that I'm well, is making sure that I understand what phase, what season I'm in my business. And then when I'm in those heightened seasons of hustle time, I understand what it is that I'm trying to accomplish. I don't believe in busy work just to be working for working's sake, right? So what goal am I looking to accomplish in this season? How can I operationalize that goal very clearly with specific steps? And who can I delegate work to as part of working on this goal together? And then how will I measure when the goal has been reached? All of those things are really important to me. And it took me a while to learn that, because I wasn't an entrepreneur before this. I was a lawyer, and learning how to be a lawyer and be an entrepreneur at the same time is bananas. It's so difficult. So over time, I had to learn how to build my business acumen in addition to building my skills as an attorney, to be able to get to the point where I could say, okay, I need rest at this stage, and here's how I can position myself to achieve rest and have that in a way where I'm not, having this cloud over my head of all the things that I have to do, and, to be able to fully rest when the time comes. So that's how I would approach that particular question.
Yeah. So I love that you're basically naming for us when to pause, when to pivot, and essentially when to walk away from, the things within your business that's not serving you. And when I say walk away, I mean delegation, right? So I had recently made a post on TikTok, or not recently, it's about a couple of months ago, talking about strategic planning, right? Not just operationalizing things in your business just for operationalizing sake without a plan. And it's really, you are right. A common theme across the series with the ladies as well is understanding that as you've left the system, there are other people within the system that are creating things for you to be able to unplug as a lawyer. So you're just a lawyer, and then there's somebody else doing the work. But now that you step into the space of being lawyer and entrepreneur, or, just Cheyenne is a doula, right? Being a doula and entrepreneur, there are some systems that you yourself need to learn and have to set up in order for you to step away from your business. And I'm really appreciating the theme across this conversation, because people think you start a business and you hustle. Hustling it cannot be that all the time, right? Yeah. And like setting your business up in a strategic and intentional way where you operationalize systems and in a way that you can step away from your business and have somebody else respond to the email, right? Okay. And have somebody else do the research. Don't be scared to delegate, because it's really in and I know this from working with other lawyers. It's like, you are definitely praised in a law firm for billings and for hours. And the longer you stay and the more you do, you are definitely rewarded. And it's really hard to shift that mindset and that culture as you step into your wholeness and try to create rest for yourself, of like, well, okay, how do I turn that off? When do I turn that off? What systems do I put in place to turn that off? And I wouldn't, as Faith is saying, encourage you guys to really think about strategic planning and be intentional and not necessarily rush. I know sometimes it's hard. You have to rush out and just start. I'm not telling you to pause, but I'm telling you definitely have a document somewhere, dust it off, right? And really plan and think about the back end of your business, not just the front end of the pretty glitz and glam and things like that. So I know, Faith, we've been on for just roughly maybe 32 minutes. I know I said I wasn't going to take too much of your time. And I know I want you to go spend Juneteenth with your family and, and rest and things like that. I just have two more questions for you. The first is, and I'll ask it, I'll let you answer it separately, because I know I always ask two-parters. Anyway, the first one would be, what's one boundary you've recently held, right? Held specifically around feedback that made you feel more whole?
One boundary that I've recently held around feedback that's made me feel more whole.
Yeah. So it could be anything, right? It could be, I was sick and my body told me to lay down.
Oh, so not just feedback from humans.
No. Feedback is a system, honey child.
Yes,
feedback. You know what I'm saying? So I know that we're talking about leadership, but we're also talking about wholeness. So I just want to know, what's one feedback in your life? It can be with family too, right? We're not just static here. You're a mom, right? You are a whole human. You're a whole human. What's one thing that you continue to hold the line on that makes you feel whole?
I have a juicy one.
Okay, we're ready, honey child. We're ready.
So as I mentioned before, I'm a trademark attorney, and I help lots of people with trademark applications. Right, the trademark application process, I would love to say it takes 30 days.
Oh no!
And it's from start to finish, boom, boom, done. It's not. It's an extensive process, and there are different, places, avenues, twists and turns that your application can take. And one of the things that I learned from feedback early in my practice and that I incorporated into my business was to be very, very clear to people about the fee structure and when additional costs will arise.
She is, y'all. She is.
I have a very detailed document explaining all the different scenarios in the process that I can refer to along the way. And I give it to clients ahead of time. I have them acknowledge it, initial it. I gave this to you. I told you what was, I'll put you on. I've had a couple of clients recently come back and tell me, I never knew anything about these additional fees. And I don't think you are a transparent person.
How are you going to say that to a lawyer?
Okay, I don't think you are really transparent because I had budgeted X for this process, and now you're telling me I got to play Y, Z, and the third. And what I did, not only did I pull up the document they initialed, I pulled up recordings of conversation that I had with this person where I said, these are the things that are going to come along the line, and this is what the fees are going to be, right? I do think that it's important to be transparent, especially when it comes to money. And in this instance, maybe the earlier me would have been like, oh, well, I'll take a little bit off, I'm out, whatever. This time around, it's like, no, you got to pay what you owe. And it's not from a place of arrogance or from a place of trying to make somebody feel small, but to just remind them, hey, this is something that we have discussed before, and this is what the boundary is, right? I can't continue to work with you if you're not going to, be in alignment with our agreement that we had established at the very beginning of our relationship. So that is my answer to the question.
Yeah. So, but you see, this is again tying it back from the top of the conversation to now. Know your worth. Understand your worth. Be clear in your worth. Right? I can tell y'all from experience. I've worked with Faith. She gonna send you a video. She gonna send you writing. She gonna tell you in the 5-paragraph email to make sure you read it. So what you mean you didn't follow instructions and now you're mad? Oh, child. Listen. And that's something that I am learning as I develop my own business, is really just having specific touch points with clients where you always continue to explain, because it's that, right? Like, it's the fact that you are now feeling aggressed by me, right? Drawing the line of a boundary when you yourself could have just simply read this specific thing, and now I have to come back and really have a for lack of better words, a difficult conversation with you around money. And like, I understand that people budget for things. I myself too have to budget, so does Faith, right? And a simple conversation. Well, Faith, I can't pay that now. Can I have an extension? Right? It's also being respectful of someone else's processes. But something that I'm learning, leadership don't respect processes. The ideology and I'm learning that as people exit corporate America, or even people within corporate America, it's really difficult to see, particularly women of color, with processes. And you see what I'm saying? Like, people feel like having a process is something, is something to be frowned upon. At least that's what I am noticing, right? Because people don't want to be fit into a box. They want you to follow their lead, and they believe in the customer is always right. And I'm learning the customer is not always right, right? But with the customer and the both of us have to come to a meeting of the minds and really be like, okay, well, we can have a compromise conversation. You're going to pay me my money. You're going to pay me my worth, but I can extend the time. Right? So I appreciate you naming. That was juicy, other child. What do you?
Oh, man.
That lady who's going to send you 5 emails. You don't read the email in 2 days. She's going to remind you in a video, in a message portal, in an email. I mean, if she could have sent a carrier pigeon, she'd have sent a carrier pigeon. What do you mean? You know what I mean? So I'm just like, what do you mean? Anyway, but as we close out the conversation, what is one thing that you want to leave folks with as we close the conversation? And then I'll end us letting people know what you have in store and where to find you. So tell us what do you want to leave the folks with today?
Yeah, I'm a really big believer in speaking life into people. And so no matter what anyone has said over you, no matter what you've believed about yourself, I want you to know that you are someone of worth, that your life matters, that your contribution to the world can't be calculated. It is invaluable. And don't let anyone silence your voice, including you. Don't believe that you are too insignificant to have an impact. Don't believe that you are not worth anything to anybody. Please Accept that you are a child of worth, that you have something meaningful to give to the world, that you have a light in you that is meant to shine, and that we need you. The people in your sphere of influence need you. The world needs you. Your community needs you. You are needed. You are loved, and you have something valuable to give to the world. So that's what I want to leave folks with.
All right. Well, y'all heard it. You valuable, honey child. I'm valuable. We all valuable. It's Juneteenth. Okay. We are basking in our valuableness. Okay. And I so appreciate that, what you're leaving the folks with. And I appreciate you for being in the space, Faith. You guys can find Faith on TikTok. I think it's at Faith Mitton Law. Yeah. And then, www.faithmittonlaw.com. And then she also has an assessment coming, y'all, about like how, do you need trademarks, right? Like, are you branding in that way, understanding the protections that you legitimately need? Y'all can also find her on YouTube, honey child. She running up them numbers on YouTube, honey child. Okay, so run it up. And we gonna see Faith again, right? I am hoping to have different levels of conversations just like this with other women of color who are making impact, who's changing the game, and having the real conversations of things that's truly needed in this space of burnout. I'm not saying other creators are not having these conversations. They are. It's just that I got something to say, Faith got something to say, and the women in my sphere of influence got something to say too. So thank you. I appreciate y'all. And we'll see you guys next week. Talk to y'all soon.